Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and I have the opportunity today to go back into the time machine and look at a reel that was probably popular in the late 1970s or early 1980s. This reel was made in Korea, and it's under the brand name Cyclone, but I imagine that Cyclone was not the manufacturer. I'm thinking of this time you saw reels from Korea that, they had the Daiwa, they had the Ryobi, you had Pen, and you had others with reels made in Korea. This one was as well, but I believe this would be a trade name. That is, somebody else manufactured it, and that it did not manufacture the reels themselves. These reels were popular in combinations with rod and reel, generally sold in mass market merchandisers. And this one, it's a nice survivor. Turns pretty easy. All the features and functions work. This is what's called, I call a bang bail. It comes over, and instead of an internal trip, it has that external trip. And everything seems to be running fine. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to use this one as a learning event. We're also going to get it tuned up so that it can have a second chance. And, we'll see where this one takes us. It's always interesting to note some of the features on a reel. It's also nice to understand the manufacturing and the design underneath it, and more importantly, what it takes to make it run. This is a Cyclone 6200. By today's standards, it's probably a 40 or a 50 size fishing reel. When I see something like anodized aluminum cast iron spool, Daiwa was very big on putting down anodized aluminum on their products. So this may actually be a Daiwa reel. I'm not sure. I don't want to claim it is, but I want to say that when you pay attention to some of the clues, sometimes you get the look and feel of who that manufacturer is. Here's another thing. Daiwa used that triangular type of adjuster button and that Ripley spool, whatever that ripple might be called, on the top of the spool. So who knows? Maybe it's a Daiwa, maybe it isn't. But at any rate, let's get started. Before I get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like fishing reel service and repair. If you like to understand about fishing reels, how they're made, and how they work, and the time frame and the history and things like that. All things that I cover on my channel. If you enjoy that, you'll enjoy the channel. Please subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and you'll learn what I'm posting, when I'm posting, and you'll get to make a decision as to whether that's something you would like to watch. Here's another clue on the handle. That collar for the handle is very much looking like a Daiwa collar. Okay, I like to do a couple of things. I like to take off the exterior pieces and parts. We'll get an idea about how the reel is from doing that. One of the things we can note there is we don't have a nut on the bowl holding this router in. So that would be an underneath kind of a clip, and nothing wrong with that. It's just over time, if that clip wears, you get a rock in the rotor. This one's pretty solid. Okay, we've taken that off. Next up, let's get underneath and see what architecture is here. There's a lot of different types of architectures used in fishing reels. I would suspect this is a lower end reel, again, probably used in rod and reel manufacture by trades for, mass marketers. Think Sears, think Kmart, think department store kind of brands back in the day. And, they tend to stick to, proven and, minimalistic, if you will. They're not going to be leading edge design, but they're going to be reliable. And that's what a Sears at the time would have wanted, versus something that's leading edge and maybe has a tendency to break. When I take my side plate screws out, I put them on my table before I do anything to make sure that they're all the same size. If they're not the same size, what I do is I like to mark where the oddball came from, so that I know when it's time to reinstall where to put that back. All right, here's our first look inside. This is a good old-fashioned, what I call cross-arm kind of a setup. Got a lot of things going on here. We have a main gear who has the anti-reverse ratchet is on the outside of the main gear. We have an offset eccentric drive here that's going to do the oscillation, full of grease. That grease is useless in there. There's no moving parts there, so that just is accumulated. We have a dry backside of this one that drives the pinion gear to turn the rotor. Little shim that belongs on that main gear. We'll put it back when it's time. Here's your crosswind arm. So what's going to happen here is, because that's offset as it spins, this is going to go up and down, and that's going to drive the oscillation of the spool, the up and down movement of the spool as it's collecting the lines, so that it'll have a nice even gathering for the line lay on the spool. Okay, this is your anti-reverse dog. When I do these kinds of things, just like to make sure that they're working fine, which is what's happening here. You don't want to move something and, well, take it apart if you don't need to take it apart. What you do need to do on a reel like this, if you don't know the reel, is take pictures. Because if you did move this, you want to know that, well, there's a spring that lodges under here. You can see the tail end of the spring. It's really on this post here that's holding it. And there's a hook side of it that's back here, which is bringing that return. So when your anti-reverse dog comes over, that spring is throwing it back as it hits the ridges of your main gear. And that's where it's interlocking to stop the reel. Okay, there's a little bit of cleanup on this one, and then we'll show you the rest of the reel. I'm curious about it as well. So this is a design that you found in Korean reels at the time. So it's kind of true to form. You would find these in the Daiwas, as mentioned, and maybe this is a Daiwa reel. You'd also find it in a Ryobi reel, and there are others out there. I think Penn was another one that was using this crosswind in their 100 series. Not quite certain. I'd have to go back and check that. Okay, one of the things you want to do as you're servicing your reel, regardless of what the age of the reel is, get rid of all the old greases and dirt. You saw me moving a bristle brush. That was to clean the channels of the teeth. I'm doing a little bit more here. And when you do that, check, make sure that your teeth are not damaged. I just had an Akuma reel come in and had broken teeth, not broken, it had worn teeth on it. And well, it just created a grind and a skip in the reel. So of course, if you're servicing it and you notice that you have that kind of a condition, you're going to need to replace. Well, how do you replace something like this in a reel that's probably 50 years old? You don't. You can find a donor reel. This, quite honestly, is the first Cyclone I'm working on, which is why I've picked this as a project reel. But it's going to be hard to find a donor reel to get the parts from. So if you have a broken gear at that point, chances are you're out of luck. All right, this pin here is what's going to work on the back end of that arm. You can see the hole for the pin here. And as it moves, it's going to move this up and down. And if you pull that pin out, that's going to release the axle shaft. You can pull the axle shaft through the top. What you want to do, again, if you're doing a reel like this, is you want to pay attention to that little connector block, this one, and the orientation, because it's real easy to put this in upside down if you're not paying attention. So this is the bottom, and this is the back. And well, any other way, it's going to cause the reel to kind of jam up and not do what you would like it to do. Okay, here's that U-clip that I was talking about. Let's pull that out. And that clip is holding the rotor in. There's a groove on top of the pinion gear here where that sits in and well, provides the adjustment point or the attach point for the rotor. Let's take a moment. You're seeing that I use a lot of penetrating oil and cotton swabs and things like that. One of the goals of cleaning a reel and checking for that all of the mechanical parts are correct, well, that's job one of servicing the reel. It's not just about opening up a reel, putting some oil or greases on the reel, closing it back up. You need to identify any issues that are there and replace appropriately if something's wrong. Okay, there's one more piece here. I want to hold my finger on the top here for that pinion gear. Another squirt of penetrating oil in there. Another cotton swab to go inside and clean anything that might be in there. And you can see that there was some dirt and debris in there. Okay, last thing we want to do on this side, well, there's two things I guess we want to do. One of them involves this top bearing. Yeah, there is a bearing in this reel. We want to clean that off as best we can, and then we'll test. Yeah, the bearing's running fine. Okay. Which is a good thing because it looks like it's pretty well packed in there. I'm not sure it could come out. This is a metal case. It's a metal exterior race to this bearing. It actually looks like it's a sealed bearing on this side, which is nice for that time and period. But getting that bearing out would probably be a challenge. And if it's running fine, there's no need to take it out. Probably an odd size bearing from what I'm looking at that may even be difficult, if not impossible, to find a replacement for. Remember, we're talking about a good time ago in terms of the age of this. Looks like the back end of that bearing is exposed, so I'm going in with an oiler from underneath to fill that with oil. One more thing to do on this then is to clean up the case. And I can say first impressions for the reel, I like the reel. Yeah, it's low end. Nobody said that the only reels you can like have to be $300 reels. I like the reel. I like the design. The feel is fine. I think that we're going to find somebody who's going to enjoy using this maybe as their first reel. And there's plenty left in this one. One of the things I like about it, that little anti-reverse dog we were showing you before, it's going to make a nice snap, right? It's going to click, click, click. It's not a bait alarm. I guess it's an angler alarm. It's going to tell all the people fishing around you that there's a fish on. All right. Let's put some of this back together again then. We did mention that this is your pinion gear. You need to put a little bit of grease and use fishing reel grease only, please. Fishing reel grease on the part that's going to go through the case. There's a race in the bearing here that's going to hold that, so get some grease onto that where it's going to ride on the inner race. Make sure you get grease onto your pinion gear, and then we can go put that back in. I neglected to say that when I do these reels, I do use a parts tray. That's my way of keeping track of where all the pieces are that I took off, so that when I go to reinstall, well, it's an easy deal. All right, that clip goes back in. A bit of a mop up there. And you're going to notice on this case that the case is actually acting as the bushing on both sides of that main gear. There are no bearings here. All right, next up then, we can put in the axle shaft. The axle shaft gets just a very light coat of grease because it does go through that pinion gear. And if you put a glob of grease on there, it's just going to kind of get knocked off as it comes through. As I'm doing that, I also notice there's a little bit of dirt inside that rotor bowl. So I'm going to just take a moment here with that cotton swab. Get that dirt out of there. This is what's called a shielded spool, or skirted spool rather. Skirted spool goes to the outside of the bowl, not the inside of the bowl. During this period, there was a mixture. You had some reels that would have the spool go inside, some go outside. This is an outside. Also, I want to take a time before I put that spool back on to make sure that that little bail arm has oils on it. If you find that you've oiled it and it's still hard to come over, well, then you're going to have to take this off and grease it up and the like, clean out the old dirt and debris. In this case, it doesn't appear to be much there, if any, and that penetrating oil will flush that out. Okay, kind of moving down now. We have that block. Remember how we said flat side to the back, rounded side to the bottom. Find your two holes and line them up on here. And you should have two things. This pin should extend into that little channel on the back side and should be proud on this side to enable you to have it run in this channel here to keep it square. A little bit of grease into that channel. Time to grease our main gear. And what you're seeing here is that the service of a reel like this does not take a lot of time. Even with my talking and the like, we're probably, I don't know, 15 minutes into the service of this. So what are we going to say? Max is probably 20 minutes to service it. If you have this reel and you spend 20 minutes every year doing exactly what we're doing here, this reel is going to last you a very long time. Okay, we've put grease onto both posts. We put grease onto the teeth. We can bring this in now and set that in just like that. That's how your reel is going to set. Now we take our crosswind arm, hook the pin, bring it over the eccentric. Now you'll see as we turn this that this axle shaft is going to go up. It's at the highest point when it's at there, and when you bring it down to the 6 o'clock position, it's at the lowest point. That's what's causing your spools to go up and down. There are 2 shim washers that go on the top of that. Kind of holds the arm in track, but it's also a little bit of a cushion to your side plate. Side plate goes on. We can clean that up a little bit first. Might as well take the opportunity as you're servicing a reel to clean it. I'm going to use a kitchen scrubby pad and a rod and reel cleaner for that purpose. Now be careful with the decals. This is a decal. If you're using something stronger, sometimes you're going to break the bond of that decal, and well, it's just going to get lost. Okay, when you put that on, before you put the screws on, turn the reel, make sure that it seats properly. You heard that little click there. That's because the override arm needs to seat properly. Before you put those screws in, move it over to make sure that it's doing just that. Turn it back, make sure you hear that click. Again, that's not a bait alarm, that's a fishing alarm. And anybody near you would hear click, click, click. It's going to go running to you to see what do you get, what do you get. At least that's what my grandson would say. All right, let's tighten this back down. We'll take a look at what the drag system is on these. Now, a lot of times on these trade reels, or I'll call them department store reels for lack of a better term, the drag washers were either felt or Teflon. And that's because the felt is a good washer, but sometimes needs the oils, but it's inexpensive. And the Teflon is maintenance free. And a lot of times I assume that somebody who's going to buy this reel, which we'll put it in the economy line or value line, it's not cheap reel at all, it's well made. But anybody who's going to buy that is probably not going to be servicing the reel themselves. And if they're not servicing it, if you put a Teflon drag in there, well, chances are the reel won't fail because of that. Teflon is self-lubricating, and it doesn't dry out. Okay, before I go over to there, I'm just going to use that little kitchen scrubby again to clean this up. Nice reel overall. All right, the bail is in good condition. You always want to check the bend of the bail. If you have one of these that has an anchor point on this side, you want to make sure that it's in there good. This is in good, and not sticking out like it very possibly could be all the way out here, like the arm of this pick. And if it's out there, chances are it's bent out of shape and you need to reform it. That's easy enough. It's wire, it bends. All right, let's just go over here and check what we have inside. Again, this very much looks like a Daiwa spool. If somebody asked me make a bet, I would bet it was Daiwa's manufacturer. I could be wrong. All right. If anybody knows for real, let me know. All right, we're going to just pick these out and see what we have. Well, we have what, again, would be a telltale sign of a value reel. We have steel washers, not stainless steel washers. That's not good because steel rusts, and you can see some of the rust on that. We're going to use a little bit of a steel wool to try and clean that cavity out. Why do they rust? Water gets in there. Why does water get in there? Well, from the top of the reel as the line is coming down and spinning, that line is wet. It goes into the bowl. The water there has nowhere to run but straight in. Over time it breaks the plating on these and, well, causes the rust you see here. Surprise, surprise, these are leather washers, which is another option of that time. So these do need to be lubricated. These can dry out, and if they dry out, they're going to crack and break, and then they're not going to be effective at all. I'm going to use a microfile now just to knock the rust off of that. Obviously, you can't restore the plating, but we'll use the file to knock that off. And then when we lubricate the washers, that should be enough to keep the rust from coming back. Now again, another good reason why, regardless of how frequently you use a reel, two things are important. One is that you clean up after you take the reel fishing. That is, either spray the reel off or immerse the reel in fresh water and let it sit. As interesting as it sounds, a lot of folks will tell me they take their rod and reel into the shower with them when they return from their fishing trip, and that's all sage advice, because the fresh water can get it cleaned off and prevent issues like this. Okay, so you can't replace the plating, but the rust is gone. And now we need to address the drag washers. They're leather, so what you want to do means it's permeable. I like to take some fishing reel grease. In this case, it's actually Cal's drag grease, but if you don't have it, don't run out and get it. Just use regular fishing reel grease. I use my glove as a tool. Wipe it in real good. This is porous now, so the grease is actually there to keep this washer flexible and prevent cracking. It's not there to make it slip any easier. Now you have two options on that. You can rub it into the drag washer, or you can put a glob of it onto your metals. I prefer to do this because you can work it in. There's two of these washers that have rectangular centers. They go high and low on the 3-stack. So you alternate drag washer and then the metal. The first one's called the keyed washer. We'll put that second one in. This is called the eared washer because, well, it looks like ears, right? Those fit in the slot in the spool. That one goes next. We have one more of these. For some reason, this one's a little thicker. That's kind of interesting. We'll do the same thing. Glob on it some grease, rub it in. Don't put any excess in there. It's not going to do any good. It's just going to get squeezed out. But make sure it's tight, and then bring that last keyed washer in. Then we can bring our retaining clip in. That fits in the slot in the spool, and you saw me remove that earlier with the pick. Usually these don't have a lot of tension, so you can bring them in with your hand. Sometimes you'll need an assist, maybe pliers or something. And what's happened here is this one's gone below. So we're going to bring that up a little bit. You want to be in that slot. That's a retaining clip. It doesn't have a mechanical purpose other than it saves the washers from falling out later. But one of the things that's missing on this reel is there should be a little lever or spring here. It probably came off of this tip right here. Should be a little extension wire that kind of comes out and goes over this way. I imagine over time that's broken off. That extension wire would work with this click ratchet. That click ratchet, when the spool turned backwards, would make a noise. Not important. You can take that reel fishing all day without that, but it is missing it, and it is a note that it is missing. Okay, we're going to tighten down our top drag. Make sure that all the work we just did there holds. It does. And then you want to back that off. You don't want this to act as a vise. You don't want it just clamping it down for the sake of staying that way and then find out that you've squeezed everything out. And, well, that can lead to the drag breaking. All right, we just want to get rid of that little piece of line that was left on the spool. We'll bring our handle that looks like a Daiwa handle over. Here's another piece. Daiwa has the flat knob. So again, it kind of looks like that, doesn't it? All right, let's tighten this up and we'll give it a final test here. Well, it was running nice before I started the service on it, so it's not a question of how is it going to perform. It was more about showing you the way that the reel is made, talking a little bit about how it was used. And right now I'm just cleaning up a little bit here. This is a 400000. It's a very fine steel wool. It's a polishing steel wool as opposed to a cleaning or an aggressive steel wool that you might find, say, a plumber using to clean up copper pipe. And whatever salts were on there, well, they're gone. There's a little bit up top here too. So with apologizing for taking a couple more seconds of your precious time, we're just going to clean this up as well. I know if I put it on the side and say, oh, I'll do it after the video, maybe I will, maybe I won't. So let's just do that now. Well, while I'm doing that, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you need some advice about a reel, maybe you're wondering about what the modern version of this reel might be, I'll just leave those in the comments section and we'll try to answer those questions for you. Okay, I think we got it now. All right, so what do we have? We have a reel that was made in Korea, late 1970s, early 1980s. The metal frame gives it away, probably by Daiwa, given some of the telltales that we've seen, the collar on the handle, the flat knob, the triangular drag adjuster, the modeling on the surface here. All of those things, kind of the trademark of a Daiwa reel at the time. The anodized aluminum spool, another clue, but I can't say 100% certain, but can say it's a very nice reel, utilizing what we'll call a classic design. You won't see a bang bale around any longer. You'll see internal trips. You won't see metal frames anymore. You'll see graphite. A lot of things different from the reels of today. One of the things that's not different is, well, it's built with quality and can last for a long time to come. Let's give it a test. Look at it. It's just smooth as butter. What more could you want in a fishing reel? So this is an example of why you don't just dismiss wholeheartedly vintage reels and say, oh, they came from a certain time, they can't be relevant versus today's reels. I heartily disagree with that. Let's make sure this, poorly set, make sure that bail trips. It does. Fire it again. Nice and easy. Great reel. Nice reel all around. And I hope it's something you'll consider if you find it available somewhere. And if you do, just take the steps that we did here to service it. It'll keep you fishing for a long time to come. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. Before I leave, I want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, everybody involved in keeping us out of harm's way. I want to thank you for watching, for helping make the channel what it is, and, for all the questions, the comments, and the recommendations that you make to help me make this better. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.